Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, I'll say good afternoon to those of you who are joining me here on the East Coast. I also want to say good morning to those of you who are joining us in the Central Time Zones, the Mountain Time Zones, and Pacific Time Zones. We also want to say good evening to any of you who are joining us from across the pond in parts of UK or parts of Europe, and also good early morning if any of you are joining us from parts of Asia or parts of Australia. Welcome to today's presentation. I realize that most of you here today are PowerOptions subscribers, are currently going through your trial subscription to PowerOptions, or I should say your trial accounts. Welcome to the presentation. We made a change today. We sent out an email yesterday. We made a slight change based on customer feedback to help streamline the search functions in all strategies. Today we want to review the functions and the features of the new search. So welcome to the presentation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mike Chupka. I'm the Director of Education here at PowerOptions. I've had the great pleasure of working with Ernie Zarenner and the PowerOptions staff for the past 10 years. I handle a lot of the coaching sessions, webinars, and education on the site. I have co-authored 2 books with Ernie on investing. And of course, I am versed in all strategies on the site and others as well. I want to let everyone know at this point we are recording this presentation, so it's going to be available for you to view on our public webinars page later on. And I also want to encourage you, when you logged on here, you had the GoToMeeting panel pop up on your screen. Inside the GoToMeeting panel, there is a question pod. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments at any time during the presentation, just go ahead and send those in. Today is going to be a short presentation. We're going to highlight the features of the new search. It's not going to take us that long. We're going to make sure we do as much as possible. We'll leave some time at the end. So if you have other questions, if we wrap up early, if you have other questions that are related to options or the tools on PowerOptions, not necessarily the search tool, we'll have some time at the end to handle some questions and do some other education as well. All right, well, what we are going to cover today is we're going to review the features of the new search functions. We're going to talk about how to quickly navigate the filters. It's fairly self-explanatory, but there are some features you might not have seen yet. They're going to be very useful for you. We're going to take a quick glance at various strategies, and then, of course, we're also going to discuss just general tips and suggestions on the search criteria as we go through it, as we normally would in a standard introduction to PowerOptions presentation. All right, well, that being said, let me navigate over to the main PowerOptions suite of tools. We'll take a look at the search in just a moment. I have the default settings up here, but what I want to know first, I'm going to launch a poll here, and just so we can cover as much as possible today that includes everyone, just let me know what types of option strategies you're trading or researching right now. Are you mainly doing covered calls and naked puts? Are you taking a look at the protective option strategies, married puts, collars perhaps, the radioactive trading techniques? Are you doing vertical spreads, bear call credits, bull put credits, iron condors? Are you doing the time spreads, calendar spreads, diagonal or horizontal spreads? Or are you currently right now just buying calls and buying puts, speculating on market movement? Or maybe you're even using the put options there for protection or calls for protection across your portfolio. So just let us know which strategies you're doing here. I'm going to leave the poll open for about a minute. Over 65% of you have already voted. I appreciate that. Okay, we've had the poll open for about 50 seconds, so I'm going to leave it open for another 10 or 15 seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, I'm going to encourage you to do so. All right, let's go ahead and close that poll, ladies and gentlemen. I want to share the results with you real quick. It looks like today's audience, we have 50% of our audience doing the protective option strategies, married puts and collars, and the radioactive trading techniques. Second place, 25% of you doing covered calls and naked puts. 17% of you are doing vertical spreads. That's fantastic. And no one's doing long calls and long puts today. And we've got 8% of you doing time spreads. Well, all right. Let's go ahead and hide those results before we get right into the search. I want to go into the Other Strategies tab here, and let's customize our view. So just as before, we'll put married put up top. That was the winner today. I'm going to move collars up as well. In second place, we had covered calls and naked puts. Fantastic. We'll leave those there. We have some of our credit spreads, bull put, bear call, and iron condor. I'm going to go ahead and remove the custom spreads, and let's add in the calendar spreads as well. We'll just do calendar calls for those of you that are doing time spreads and add some menu. I'm going to walk through some of the views for each of these strategies during this presentation. All right, let me go ahead and save that. All right, now let's go back in. Now, the first thing I want to assure everyone is that the change that we made today for the new features, the streamlined features of our search tool, does not affect any of the criteria that was available. All the criteria you could have used beforehand in any given strategy are still there. They're just categorized now for an easier navigation. In addition to that, any of your saved searches that you've had that you've already created based on the PowerOptions default searches or new searches that you've created did not change. They're still there for you as well. Now let's go into married put, and before we go into the search, what we want to show is let's go back in time for lack of a better term. Here is the old search screen. So we went into married put, we went into search, we have oh, I'm sorry, that's not where I wanted to go. One second, I was where I wanted to be and I messed that up. Let's go back 1 second here. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. Apologize for that. Let's go into married put there and let's go into search. Fantastic. Okay, so in the old view, where we used to have, after you have your results at the top, which is still the same when you go into any search criteria, we scroll down below and you have a large listing of vertical criteria. Now, if you were just getting started or you're familiar, over time you learn that, okay, most of my option information is here in the center section, and most of my stock fundamentals and technicals are over here on the right. But there's no real clear order. So if over time you learn, okay, well here are my risk and my reward features up top for a given strategy. Eventually, okay, this 5 grouping here, this is my liquidity. Here's some things related to the price. Here's my implied volatilities and so forth. But it's not intuitive. It's not crisp, and you would just have to keep scrolling down and figuring out, oh, well, if I wanted to use earnings per share growth and average stock volume, well, I have that here, but then my average stock volume is down here. And if I wanted to use RSI, it's down here. So it's a good view because you have everything in front of you. But if you're trying out a new strategy or if you just want to quickly navigate to which criteria you want to use, it's very difficult to hunt and peck between everything to find what you specifically want. So the change we've made based on customer feedback, let's go to married puts and we'll go into search. As before, we'll see the same search results that match our default criteria. And as I scroll down below the listed trades, we now have a cleaner view organized by tab navigation of the different categories. So we'll start off in each strategy with our options information. And in addition to having it spread out by the tab navigation so you can quickly find if you're looking for technicals, fundamentals, or your options criteria, when I'm in the options tab, now the category for time, so to select my option expiration time frame, my days to expiration, or the time value amount or percent for my specific option. Views for implied volatility, all lumped into one area. The risk here, of course, when we're talking about married put positions or following the radioactive trading techniques, we don't have a return, but our risk measures that we'd use, we would be looking at the maximum risk monetarily, the percentage maximum risk, and the percent to break even. Quickly choose in and out of the money, and then as we scroll just a little bit further down, and the only reason why you usually have to scroll down here is because of the resolution, so we can see a little bit better. Now we have it categorized by our prices and strike prices, the net debit on the position, bid-ask spread, probability, and then the liquidity listed below all of our option volumes, open interest, put-call volume ratios, and put-call open interest ratios. So it's easy for me to identify whether I'm trying to focus on the time selection, the risk level, range in or out of the money, total net debit for the position. It's all right there in specific categories. Now, in addition to that, if we just go into technicals, now instead of having a long vertical list of 30 to 35 different stock criteria, I can quickly identify my technical stock criteria, whether I want to use beta, a percent of 52-week range, average stock volume, historical volatility, Bollinger Bands, Bollinger Band ranges, simple moving average, and some of those new criteria that we've added within the last month, the stock days up and down, and of course the stock crossing the SMA 20 or SMA 50 number of days over or under one of those moving averages. And of course your standard fundamentals, the simple things, but very useful, the stock price range, earnings per share growth, price per earnings, filter for earnings date or ex-dividend date. It's all arranged now by simple categories in a simple navigation function between the options and the stocks. Now, many of you like to use the company lists to screen specifically against things such as the S&P 5-star list, IBD 50, or you're going to create your own personal list. Well, now you have your own tab there for lists, so we can easily pick and choose to include or exclude a sector or industry, include our recommended stock list or our preferred stock list in our search, or exclude one as well. And as before, we can simply click on Create and Modify List, just as we were always able to, and that will take us to that simple field where we can combine our created stock lists, or we can choose to create an entirely new list as well. All right, now let's go back to the main options view. As you saw from time to time as I was mousing over certain things, you would see a big window for the pop-up definition of each filter. Now this existed on the old search as well, but now we have the availability to allow larger windows into the screen and that they stay up more permanently. So if you're not sure of a criteria in the options section or in the stock technicals or fundamentals section, it's much easier now to simply hover over that. We'll see a brief description of that specific criteria, and you'll also see a example of how you might use a ratio, in this case the IV over HV. If we were looking for options, for example, probably wouldn't be doing this in the married put menu. This would be more for selling premium, covered calls, naked puts, maybe standard collars. But the IV over HV ratio of greater than 1, this will show us options that are considered overvalued as their implied volatility is higher than the historical volatility on the stock as well. So this allows us a little bit bigger view. With allowing the tabs in here, we can see we can expand the, I apologize, we can expand the text so you can see a bigger view. All the functionality is still there as well. It's just a range for quick navigation between the options and stocks. Now, in addition to that, one of the features that we're really excited about is the active filters over here on the right-hand side. The active filters menu shows us what we're currently screening by in our default search. When I first came into the married put menu, we're using, of course, the default radioactive sorting by earnings per share growth. Now, some of the fantastic features that I really enjoy about this is that I've logged in, I had my results, scrolled down below the list of trades to my parameter field, and many of you know when I enter my radioactive trading filters, I'll start with the default radioactive search, but based on my account size, the first thing I'm going to change is the stock price. So I can quickly scroll down in my active filters and see that stock price is here. Yes, keep in mind we're in the options tab. But next to the listing for each of the active filters, we have the magnifying glass here, magnifying glass icon. I'm just going to click on that next to stock price. And then it automatically took me back to the fundamentals view, and it highlighted the stock price field for me. So now I can quickly say, well, when I'm entering my married puts based on my account size, I'm typically not looking for stocks above $55. Now notice that when I made that change, the color of the text in the stock price also changed as well. Anytime now that you're adjusting filters inside either the fundamentals tab, the technicals tab, or the options tab, it'll show you which filters that you're editing. Now this being highlighted in red, what this tells me is that I've made a change but have yet to submit my search. If I wanted to add in another filter, let's go ahead and add in earnings per share growth. I want to make sure that the only stocks I'm seeing in my results offer at least a 7% earnings per share growth or more. So when I put in that filter, now we can see over on our active filters menu, this was automatically added. It shows us which filter we put in, which criteria we put in, and values. But again, it's highlighted in red, so it's telling me I have yet to submit the search. Okay, let's go ahead and submit that. We can submit here, down at the bottom of our active filters, or just as before, we can also submit at the top of the screen or at the bottom as well. So now we've run our search and we have our new listings. Just as before, as you could do in the old Smart Search, we can edit our columns, so which columns I want to view in my data fields. I can go into the printer-friendly results, so print those out without having the more information buttons there. And as always, you can still select to get your results by email. So you can, once you save your search, you can schedule that to have that sent to you at a given time during the day. So none of that functionality has been removed. It's all still there. And actually, it's a little bit more clear now because we're allowed to enter larger buttons to help you choose columns, printer-friendly results, and get your results by email. And of course, just as before, we can always save that search, create any new search that we want to. We can clear all of the filters. Let's go ahead and do that and hit clear. So now it's just emptied everything out of all 4 fields, and we can just start plugging in what we want to based on our search results. Or always go back to any of those default settings or any of the saved searches we've created. Those are still there for us as well. All right, so now that's just a basic view. And we started off with the married put menu, same as we saw before. Let's go ahead and change gears now, and I'm going to go into the collars as well. That was part of the protective option strategies. We just want to show some of the differences that might show up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and go to collar now, and let's just go to search as we always would. Of course, once we click on the search, we're going to see our results for whichever default search we have, our last saved search. Looks like I'm doing standard collars here as always. Let's scroll down below the listed trades, and we have the same view. I'm starting off with my initial values, standard collars, but I can go to any of the defaults that existed before or any of my previously saved searches. Now, of course, one of the subtle differences here, we still have the same functions that we saw, the same categories in our options menu that we saw in married puts. We've got our time view, implied volatility, and now we have risk and return. Just as we could with a covered call or a naked put, with the standard collar, we can now calculate our percentage max return if we're assigned on our collar position, a max return annual, our percent if unchanged, and our percent if unchanged annual, as well as still view our percentage maximum risk and the monetary maximum risk, the max profit, and the break even as well. So not much has changed. It's still the same kind of criteria that we saw before, but there are subtle differences because now we have two options. So we can select our call expiration time frame and our put expiration time frame. As just before with the collars, we can select the call expiration date to be less than or equal to the put expiration date. And again, you notice once I made that change, down here at the bottom of my active filters in my options category, we have the expire comparison, call expiration date has to be equal to put expiration date. But since I haven't submitted it yet, it's highlighted in red for us to let us know we have an active filter that is yet to be submitted in the search. And the same thing we saw, the technicals, well, it's the same view that we saw before. 90% of the time, the stock, technical, and fundamental criteria will be the same for each strategy. So if I wanted to enter in my average stock volume again, let's just put in 750,000. Once again, as soon as I add that, see down here in the active filters, shows me what I've just entered. And of course, you could put in RSI, Bollinger Band ranges, current Bollinger Bands, and so forth. And again, just before, if I want to make a change, I see here that I'm looking at a net premium that's greater than 0.25, only 25 cents. Well, if I want to increase that, I'll just use that magnifying glass icon next to the filter. It's going to take me right back to that filter. Let's increase that to 50 cents, shall we? All right, so I want my net premium to be at least 50 cents. And we could submit the search again from the bottom of our active filters list, or just from the bottom of the parameter itself, or choose to clear the filters as well. Let's go ahead and submit our collar search, and now we have our results here that match that new criteria. And again, choose columns, printer-friendly results, and get results by email. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at covered call. Same filters that you're used to, that you could always filter by, your percent if assigned, percent if unchanged, percent if assigned annualized. They're all there for you. We start off in the options menu. In our parameter field, once again, we've got our expiration time frame. We're actually looking at a weekly covered call search where we're looking at all weeklies. And we could restrict this to the days. I'm going to go ahead and restrict this to 2 to 9 days, so it would show us the next week. And again, over on the right-hand side, my active filters menu, right away it shows me what we have. Okay, so we can just enter those. Here's your implied volatility. And then for those of you doing covered calls, everything stays the same. Your returns, you have your percent return difference, the downside protection and downside protection annualized, percent if unchanged, percent if assigned annualized, bid price, bid-ask spread, probability assigned. Let's say we want to do some in-the-money, slightly in-the-money weekly calls. So we'll put in a probability of at least 60. And once again, the active filters show me that I've put in a probability assigned value of greater than 60, but I have yet to submit it. All right, let's go ahead and submit that, see if we can find anything there. Oh, still have some good ones, Gilead Science, Abercrombie, Microsoft, and Walgreens. Reasonable return, I guess, 0.71%, which what we would expect with a weekly trade with only 7 to 8 days to expiration, 7 days even. Okay, and then, of course, as we saw before, the fundamentals, pretty much the same simple view, the stock price range, stock change today, earnings per share growth, PE ratio, things that are essentially reported to the excuse me, the SEC there, shares outstanding, dividends, market cap, and then the earnings dates and your ex-dividend dates, and then the technicals as well, broker recommendation, days short interest, RSI, Bollinger Bands, simple moving average, and then the historical trends crossing above or below the 20-day or 50-day moving average by how many days. As before, could have pointed this out earlier, but let's go ahead and do that now. As always, you can change how you're sorting the results any way you want to by any of the filters we could use. Currently sorting by % downside protection. I'm going to change that. We just want to sort it by % if assigned, and let's go ahead and submit the search again. That'll just change the order that we had, and so now I have it ordered by highest % if assigned to lowest. Okay, and if I wanted to alter that using the radio buttons here, this is a descending order. I could change it to ascending order, so I'd have the lowest at the top and then the highest down at the bottom of my end results, and we'll just change the order there. Higher downside protection, lower % if assigned. We usually know how that goes. Okay, so let's see. We've covered the covered calls, naked puts. We could check the same view. Oh, well, that's a bad weekly search, I guess. So let's go back to initial values here. All right, fantastic. So we still have our same views, time, implied volatility, the returns. Now we're looking at % naked yield, annualized naked yield, % to break even, and the break even annual. A range in or out of the money, price and strike price, and then your liquidity values. And then the technicals and fundamentals would be the same. And as before, if I just want to navigate quickly to any of these criteria, see, let's take, for example, I've got price to earnings in the fundamentals of 0 to 70. Say I want to change that to be 0 to 40. Just click on the magnifying glass icon next to it. It will take me right to that field. Change it to 0 to 40, and let's go ahead and click on Submit. All right, so now we have our 7 results that match that new default criteria with our new settings. And as always, we could choose to save that or clear the filters and create a search from scratch. Let's see, bull puts, bear calls, the credit spreads. Let's just take a look at that very quickly. All the same criteria you would have had before are still there. Your probability ranges, range out of the money, net credit, for example. We have our expiration time frame. We're searching in May. Our implied volatility ratios, our risk versus return. Let's put in a net credit of at least 50 cents there, 10% return. Range out of the money, simple. Let's just increase that to 7. Shows me what I've changed here in red, so I know what I've actively been changing. I've yet to submit. And as we scroll further down, we can put in our probability range. Let's increase it to 85, shall we? Why not? And just plug that in. And then our liquidity, option volume today, previous option volume, open interest, and current option volume. Let's go ahead and submit that. Okay, well, we made that a little bit too restrictive. That's okay. Now we know that we may want to change our probability back down, so I'll navigate right to it, again, by using that magnifying glass icon. We'll drop it down to 75, see if we can find anything for May that matches our other criteria, 7% out of the money. Still nothing there. How about that? Can't be the net credit, but hey, let's try it. Let's lower that down there. Let's go back to 25 cents and see what we have. Oh. All right, so at 22 days to expiration, we weren't seeing spreads that matched our stock and our option criteria that had at least a 50-cent net credit. So we're down to 30 cents, and oh, there's one right on the cusp there, Decker's Outdoors. Okay, now let's talk about the columns. And we see here on my bull put credit spread, we've got our basic information, company name, stock symbol, current price and the change today. A lot of these stocks have had significant drops. They both Deckers and Baidu probably had earnings today. The expire and the days to expiration for our short option, our long option in the spread, percentage return, net credit, and so forth. But let's say that we wanted to see some stock criteria as well for comparisons. So I'm going to go into Choose Columns. That's going to take us to the same configuration page we always had. I'm going to select things. Let's go ahead and I want to see the average stock volume. I want to see the average broker recommendation. Let's see what else here. The PE ratio, maybe the earnings date. Percent earnings per share growth, let's add that in as well. Let's put in some other stock criteria also. I want to know my maximum risk. And let's see, I want to know my long option and my short option delta, and then of course my delta ratio, I believe, as well. All right, let's go ahead and save and return. As before, we're going to be prompted just to refresh the page. Let's close that window, hit resend. Okay, so now I still have my columns added, and I simply just have to scroll over to the side. So you can use the scroll bar down at the bottom just to scroll over, see those new criteria where the earnings dates, 4/25, probably at close of business yesterday, which is why we saw Deckers here drop about 5 points, about 10%, and Baidu about 8 or 9% as well today also. And then, of course, 3/21 was the last earnings, so the Lulu hasn't listed when their next earnings are. We could probably assume right now it would be closer to 6/21. The last earnings date verified was 3/21. Okay, so you can just scroll through with your different criteria there as well. And as before, we can change our search results by any criteria. If we wanted it to be sorted by highest probability instead of percentage return, we can just select that from our drop-down field as we were able to before. And let's resubmit the search. And of course, looking at these ones, the decline that they've had today other than Lulu probably might be something better for a bear call spread as opposed to a bull put credit. All right, well, iron condors, real quick, same view. We're going to have some more filters to use now, of course, in the options section. Stephen, I'm sorry, Stephen, just saw your question. Can you change the column order? Absolutely. We'll do that right now. Here's the iron condor view. What I'm going to do is go back into choose columns. So when we were picking and choosing, Stephen, which columns we were selecting for the strategy, down below I can click Save and Return, or I can choose to reorder columns down here at the bottom of that configuration page. So we can just use the up-down features if I wanted to, for example, let's see, stock symbol and company name. Let's say that before I saw the net credit and the ask prices, I just wanted to see, hey, what is the percent return of this condor? What is the probability of maybe making that turn, the percent probability between? So we'll just scroll that up using the up and down arrows. I'll put the max risk next to that as well. Oh, there we go. And my lower break even and my upper break even. And if I'm looking at percent return near the top, I should probably look at total net credit close to that as well. So we'll just do this as a simple numbers instead of looking at the security. Let me click Save and Return now, Steve. Close that window. And it's going to refresh the page for us. All right, so now we've changed our columns. I've got my total net credit first after the company name, not even looking at the strikes, my percentage return, the probability, and then, of course, the maximum risk, the lower, upper, break even, and then I can look at my strike price. So just wanted to look at the numbers first, the return versus net credit, but if I wanted to look at the stock fundamentals first, in that selection page, the Choose Columns feature, you can also reorder the columns as well as having the flexibility to select which columns you wanted to view. Let's scroll down. As before, we have our features, our criteria here in our options menu, time, applied volatility, show in or out of the money, but of course now we have two ranges. So we have to look at the short call for the bear call spread, how far out of the money we want to be, and the short put for our iron condor position. And then for the price and strike price, we have the views for both the put option and the call option, whether I want to view the option bid price for the call, the delta ratio for the call spread, the delta ratio for the put spread, that's there as well. And we'll scroll down. Probability values. So now we have a whole filter, or I should say a whole category in the iron condors and iron butterflies for probability. For in addition to the percent probability between, I can look for the percent probability that the short put would be above break even, or just the probability above the short strike price. In addition to the probability between, what's the probability theoretically that the stock would remain above the short put strike price and below the short call strike price, or the probability that the security, the index or the stock, would be above the break even, the lower break even, or below the upper break even as well. And then of course the liquidity, a couple more fields added here because we're looking at essentially 4 options, but we can look at the option volume for the buy put, sell put, sell call, buy call, open interest for the put options as well, and then the percent current option volume. The percent current option volume you may not want to use as a filter as one would use for a long call, where you'd want to look for a position that maybe has an increase in volume today, looking for activity. If we're doing an iron condor, we don't want to see a lot of activity with a bullish or bearish sentiment. We want a nice stable security to stay between the strike prices. And again, if I specifically, let's say that I wanted to do iron condors, we see our criteria here that we're using. Expiration time frame all months, but we're doing a days to expiration of less than 90. Total net credit, maximum risk, percentage return, same margin on both spreads, bear call, bull put. Percent probability between or volumes. Don't have any technicals and don't have any fundamentals, but if I just wanted to make sure I was screening for iron condors on the indexes and ETFs, and maybe perhaps removing some of those leveraged ETFs, well again, let's go ahead to include stock list. Just going to click the magnifying glass icon there. Takes me right to it. What do I want to do? I want to include indexes and ETFs. Just want to screen for condors that match that other criteria on indexes and ETFs, but at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and exclude the leveraged ETFs, the ultra long, ultra short, 2 times, 3 times, FAZ, FAS, might not be the best securities to use for an iron condor as they move very quickly. So once we've entered that in, let's go ahead and submit our search. All right, so now we have some iron condors that matched our criteria. We still have a fair amount, so down at the bottom here I see we still have 367 results. I'm going to want to add more filters into that to narrow that down, and pretty much any time in any strategy when I'm running a search I want to have a list of just 20 to 25 different securities there, just maybe 2 dozen or so it's easy to navigate through and do my further research and analysis. But in any case, we see that we've just narrowed this down to the indexes and the ETFs. We've removed the leverage ones, and as before, if I just want to save it, we'll go ahead and click Save. All right, for those of you using the time spreads, the 8% of you, let's just cover that very quickly. I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions at any time, any comments, go ahead and use that question pod, send that in to me. Let's go ahead and go into search for calendar calls. And as many of you know, I've created a lot of different default searches for you to use as a stepping stone based on whether you're doing the standard calendar spreads or what I like to call the horizontal spreads, same strike spreads, or if you're doing the diagonal spreads, which not to sway you one way or the other, but that's what I prefer to use if I'm doing calendar spreads. So again, any saved searches I already had are still here. Diagonal search, my horizontal search, and all the defaults. The original initial values for calendar spreads, diagonal, calendar leaps, number 1, limit debit to 20 points, the same strike spreads. I'm going to go ahead and select my diagonal search. Let's just pull that up, see if we have any results actually. There's only one. Okay. Well, let's scroll down, and as before, now that we have multiple legs, we still have the same categories for our option and for our stocks, our technicals and fundamentals, but now we have a few more criteria entered for time, for example, because now we can select what we want to see for the near option expiration time frame. We'll sell a near-term call and buy a further out call, whether it's same strike or whether the further out in time call is in the money. That's probably why. So I've selected the far expiration time frame to be January 2015, the near expiration time frame for May. Let's keep that, but I'm going to change this to all months, and I'm going to use a range now. I just want to make it 210 to, let's say, 400 days out in time. Okay, so I'm going to use leaps, but I'm not going to force it to just be a January 2014 or January 2015. I'm going to go at least 7 months out in time, up to 400 for my long option. And I can also select to view the time value again, and we can filter by the time value for the short option or for the long option. And of course, since we're comparing 2 different options at the same time, we can do the time value ratio. And again, as before, if we don't know what one of these filters means in the strategy that we're using, you can just hover right over that, and it'll give you the clear and crisp pop-up definition in a larger window now, and it'll stay there as long as you're hovering over that window, so it'll stay there longer instead of just disappearing as we sometimes ran into with the older menu. And once again, just the basic changes that I've made. You can see here over on the right my far expiration time frame highlighted in red, signifying I've made a change to some of my filters, but I've yet to submit it. And same here with the days to far expiration. We go ahead and submit that. All right, so now we have our new views, the 13 total calendar spreads that match that new criteria. We can continue to filter, and as before, something I really enjoy here, this feature in the active filters, not only showing me in a quick window pane exactly what I'm using in this search, all in one field that's very easy to view, but if I decided to make any changes to any of my active criteria, we can simply navigate towards that. Let's just say that in the money FAR call greater than 8%. Let's say I want to make a change to that. I want to be at least 10% in the money. I'll click the magnifying glass icon there. It'll take me right to it. Let's go ahead and put in 10. Okay, and let's go ahead and submit that. See if we narrow that down anymore. We're already down to 13, so it's a good manageable list. Now we took it down to 10, so it's even more of a manageable list now. And just remember, of course, you want to make any change to fundamentals. Put anything in there for your earnings per share growth. We want to see some growth stocks that have grown 5% from last year to this year. Make that change. It'll show me the active filters here over on the right-hand side. And let's see, what else did I want to use here? That's good enough for now, I guess. We'll just make that change. And then, of course, if we wanted to go back to technicals, just navigate back over. And that's an important thing. Let's go back. I just made a change where I put in a 5% earnings per share growth. And let's go ahead and change price to earnings as well from 0 to 40. Now remember, it's highlighted in red here in my active filters. I haven't submitted this search yet. These are two filters I wanted to use. But now if I navigate over to technicals, I didn't lose what I was changing in the other tab. They're still there. They're not submitted, but it didn't erase them. Okay, so when you navigate from one tab to the other, if you make 2 or 3 changes in your options criteria, then navigate to technicals, make 2 or 3 changes, then switch to fundamentals and make 2 or 3 changes, you're not going to lose the information that you've entered by changing tabs or going to a different section. It's all still there, and you can still use that. It'll show you down at the bottom there. Let's do that as always, 750,000. It'll show us here in our active filters that we now have 3 filters that we've used across different tabs. We just haven't submitted it. Let's go ahead and run that. All right, so now we've narrowed that down even further to calendar spreads. Ironically, all stocks at $61 per share. Disney at $61.76, CME at $61.06, and Qualcomm by chance also at $61.76. It's kind of interesting. And we were using a stock price filter of 9 to 65. Again, real quick, let's open it up. See if there's other spreads. Just since we're using spreads and leverage, let's increase our stock price to 150. Click on the magnifying glass. Took me right to where I wanted to be. Let's click on Submit after I've made my change. See if we get any more results in there. Oh, amazing. Still the same 3. Okay. Well, that's about it. We knew this was going to be a quick presentation. We just wanted to showcase our functionality here of the new search tool. If you have any questions, again, go ahead and send those in. And again, of course, since we've still got time, if you have questions not related to the new search tool, you can feel free to send those in. You might spend a couple minutes or so looking at something, a different search filter if you wanted to see that, or some other features. I do want to launch another poll, though. After what we've reviewed today, I would just like some feedback, and I want you to be honest with me, of course. What I want to know is, what do you like most about the new search feature? Is it the ease of the tab navigation for changing between option and stock criteria? Is it the category headers inside each of the different tabs? When we went into options, we saw the quick categories for time, implied volatility, risk and returns, so we knew where to go to right away. Is it the active filter field to see which criteria are being used, so that you can quickly see what you're doing there and which ones are currently active, which we couldn't see on the old menu? Was it the magnifying glass icons, which allow you to click on that field and quickly find which parameter you wanted, no matter what tab you're in? If I'm in the options tab, I see my active filters, I've got a fundamental that I want to change, I can click on that. It's going to take me right there as well. And hey, even let me know you were happy with the old search, you just need some more time with this one as well. Okay, Stephen wanted to know, when do the changes take effect? Stephen, they're up right now. We launched it this morning. So that it was in effect at about 9:15 this morning, 9:20 this morning is when this new tab feature here for the search filters and the given strategies, that's when they took effect. And Daryl says it's easier, the tab navigation for options and stock. Excellent. Thank you, Daryl. Daryl also said, I love the new changes. I really love the fact that you take comments to heart and make improvement. Well, thank you, Daryl. And anytime anyone has any recommendations or suggestions on what you'd like to see, either in any of the tools, the search, the portfolio, we've got some portfolio changes maybe rolling out in the next month or so. So they're going to be available as well. Thank you, Daryl. All right. Okay, well, I've had the poll open for about 2 minutes. Almost 65–70% of you voted. Let me go ahead and close the poll, and I'll just share the results with everyone. And I'm very happy with this. 67% of you said that what you like most is the ease of the tab navigation for option and stock. Thank you. We appreciate that. 50% of you said you really like the active filter field to see which criteria are being used. I can't tell you how happy I am with that. Instead of going into the old menu and scrolling up and down to see what I actually had in a box somewhere, and even if I had put it in or if it was part of a default, being able to see it all on the right-hand side separated by what I'm using for options, technicals, fundamentals, and then being able to click on that magnifying glass icon and go right there so that I can make any changes I need to. That's a fantastic. I really love that feature that the programmers put in. 42% of you agree with me on the magnifying glass icons to quickly locate parameters, and 42% like the category headers to make it find specific criteria. So to go to the time, the implied volatility, the risk return. And 17% of you were happy with the other view, and you just need time on this one. Hey, no problem. And remember, as a subscriber to PowerOptions or as a trial member, you can schedule one of those free coaching sessions at any time. Myself, Ernie, Greg, whoever has the scheduled session will be more than happy to spend some time with you, walking you through it, talking about the features, not only the features, but where things are. Just get familiar with it. Just keep playing around with it, and then just give us any call anytime you have any questions about that. Okay? Let me go ahead and hide that. Oh, and Daryl says he's in Israel. Well, thanks for joining us today, Daryl. Thank you for logging in all the way over from Israel. It's great to see you here. Okay, Michelle asks, how do I enter not between now and expiration? Okay, well, if you already have that on one of your saved searches, it's still there. But what we're going to do now is that would be under the fundamentals for the stock. Okay, so the fundamentals, typically things that are reported to the SEC, earnings per share growth we talked about, price to earning, calculated shares outstanding, market cap, price to book, price to sales, and so forth. And then down below in our fundamentals, your earnings date, between now and expiration, and not between now and expiration, so I just checked that box. And for those of you who are doing covered calls on dividend-paying stocks, for example, you have a core holding of a dividend-paying stock in your account, you're just using out-of-the-money call options to enhance the dividend over time, but you want to make sure you don't have a dividend date coming up between now and expiration, especially if you're right at the money because you don't want to risk early assignment. You just check that box as well. And again, we can see it down here, Michelle. Once I put that into fundamentals, we have the active filters showing us that we've entered it not between now and expiration, but have yet to submit. Same with the ex-dividend date. So I know now that I want to go ahead and submit my search. And we might remove all three of these if they have earnings coming up between now and the short expiration, but we'll see. No, Qualcomm is still there right now. Okay, so that's under the fundamentals section there, Michelle, and just select not to view earnings between now and expiration. All right. Okay, well, it doesn't look like I have any further questions, so I'm just going to navigate back over to our slideshow here. I'm going to wrap up with today. I just want to remind everyone, of course, the PowerOptions subscription services. For those of you that are on your trial, if you're looking to subscribe, the 20-minute delayed service is only $60 per month. We do offer the real-time service, so every time I submit a search, run a search or refresh the page, we're getting the numbers at that instant, and that's $80 per month. And then, of course, our real-time service with the historical suite of tools is $100 per month. And we do offer the discounted rates for the annual subscriptions. Now, if you think of any questions later on, remember you can always schedule one of those coaching sessions if you have a variety of questions, either related to the search tool or any of the other tools on PowerOptions. Specific strategy questions, we're always here for that as well. Or you can just send us an email anytime to support@powerop.com. We do host a variety of regular webinars during the week. Typically every Tuesday and Thursday, Kurt hosts his Introduction to Radioactive Trading presentation, Kurt Frankenberg from radioactivetrading.com. And of course, typically every Wednesday at 12 noon, we host the Introduction to PowerOptions, where we'll focus on a specific tool or just a broad overview. And typically every Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, we have the open discussion, open forum Q&A session where we don't have any planned material. Anyone can come and join us with their questions, and I'll just use the PowerOptions tools to go through those. Unfortunately, this week, we're not going to be able to have the Friday at 4:30 p.m. presentation, but we'll be back next week as well. And of course, remember, you can call us during market hours at any time. If you live inside the continental U.S., you can reach us toll-free at 877-992-7971. And if you live outside the continental U.S., you can reach us at 302-992-7971. And there's contact links at the bottom of every page. All right, Daryl says, great job from Jerusalem. Peace. Peace to you as well. Daryl, take care. We hope to see you online again soon for one of our other presentations. Happy trading, everyone. Hope you enjoy the new tool. It looks like you did based on that poll, and we appreciate that. Just as I mentioned before, if you have any thoughts or suggestions on what you'd like to see as enhancements on any of the PowerOptions tools or the PowerOptions products, send us an email, give us a call, and let us know. We'll work to implement that as well. Happy trading, everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon. Good night.